Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers Printing and Publishing. Give us a shot. We will surely finish you. Hello, welcome to the Foreign Policy Review. I'm Dustin Pickering, and we have CARLO, Parcelli, and Billy Bob, our co-host. Today we have Scott Ritter on the program again. Thanks for joining us, Scott. I want to call to attention that YouTube deplatformed our last show from last week, and if you want to see that show, go to worldinkers.com, and under the there's a nice new section, deplatformed Foreign Policy Review. Take a look at that. Today's show, we're going to discuss G7 and the Brics and the economic effects of the West's war on Russia. So let's see, do we have any questions to begin this with?
How about you, Billy Bob?
Yeah, so Scott, we really appreciate you coming on our show. You do us all a great service. You're always going on shows like ours and just talking straight to the people. We really appreciate it. This today, if you could just maybe give us a broad summary of where we're at. And I know we were thinking about talking, focusing on the financial, the economic aspect of what's going on, of the conflict. So I'd just like to turn it over to you. And again, we thank you for being here. And it's always our tremendous pleasure.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. It's always I think a good conversation. Clausewitz said, war is an extension of politics by other means. And, so a lot of emphasis is given on what's going on the battlefield, which, is rightfully so. And we can safely say at this point in the conflict that Russia is continuing to win decisively. I don't think there's responsible military analysis out there that can make a coherent argument otherwise. The Ukrainian army is being pushed back. Some people say slowly. I say inevitably. And they're suffering horrendous casualties. And it doesn't matter how many weapons the West pour into Ukraine, the outcome remains the same. Russia dominating the battlefield, inflicting horrific losses, and the Ukrainians compelled to withdraw. And I believe this is a pattern that's going to repeat itself over and over and over again until Russia decides that it has achieved its objectives. This is not going to be a conflict that's dictated to Russia by any other partner. This is a conflict that will end when Russia dictates terms to Ukraine and the rest of the world. One of the things that'll make this outcome even more inevitable than Russia's military domination are the political and economic aspects of this conflict. And the two are inherently connected. You can't separate them from the other. This was supposed to be an economic war. The Russians weren't even supposed to last a week or two, according to the geniuses in the West who came up with the idea of sanctioning Russia. Massive sanctions, unprecedented sanctions. These were earth-shattering sanctions that were going to turn the ruble into rubble, to quote Joe Biden, and destroy the Russian economy, forcing the Russians to stop their offensive because they couldn't afford to go on. They didn't have any. They wouldn't have any money. It would send such a horrific economic shockwave across Russia that the Russian people themselves would rise up and compel President Putin and his government to cease and desist in Ukraine and possibly to leave office altogether because of the domestic unrest that would accrue. I mean, this might be something that's nice when you're smoking a bong in the basement of the White House. I'm not accusing anybody of doing that, but that's the only way I can see anybody coming up with that kind of thinking, because no rational person who knows anything about the global economic scene and the economic reality of energy security and Russia's role in this could have predicted that outcome. Russia was always going to be in charge of this, especially if given a year to prepare a response to the Western sanctions, which of course they were given. The West had been crying about sanctioning Russia, this threat for some time prior to the invasion. The sanctions were a byproduct of the United States and they say NATO, but really the G7, the G7 group of economic powers had come up and determined that they were going to drive Russia into the Stone Age through sanctions. It didn't work. In fact, long story short, the sanctions have boomeranged back on the West. The United States is facing, record inflation, record energy costs. Biden just came back from a trip to the Middle East where he was compelled to crawl on his knees to the Saudi Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Sultan, MBS, a man whom, when he was running for president, said should be treated as a pariah. The United States should never give a stage to this man, this awful man who oversaw the murder of a Saudi journalist, Jamal Khashoggi, who worked for an American outlet, the Washington Post. I mean, no, you don't, we're not going to deal with this horror. Oh, wait a minute. We just sanctioned Russia. Russia's beat it in our sanctions. There's an energy crisis. I guess we better crawl to Saudi Arabia where I can fist bump Mohammed bin Sultan and then sit there while he creates a parallel situation where I accuse him of killing Khashoggi and he comes back and accuses me of doing nothing in the face of the murder by Israel of an American journalist, Shireen. And, of course, Abu Ghraib was brought up. So there's a moral equivalency now made. Remember, we're supposed to treat MBS as a pariah, but now there's moral equivalency where MBS stares our president back in the face and says, shut up, shut up. Not only shut up, but you aren't getting in the energy you want. Because I have a more important meeting in August with the OPEC Plus, and the plus is Russia, by the way, and they're going to be the ones that are going to be dictating how much oil we produce, what the price of oil is going to be, and how the global energy security market will go home by. That's what happened. It's pathetic. Russia's in control. Europe's economy is collapsing. The Germans have recognized that they're not going to survive the winter unless they come up with a way of dealing with Russia, not just in the short term, but we have, German members of their parliament, the Bundestag, saying, hey, we got to learn how to get along with Russia in the long term because our long-term interests are linked to cheap energy that only Russia can provide. Everybody keeps talking about an alternative. There is no alternative, not one that Europe can afford. The reason why the European economy and the European, Eurozone has been succeeding for all this time is that Russia has been subsidizing European success. End of story. There's no other way to put it. Europe has succeeded economically because they've had access to large quantities of cheap Russian energy. Russia has made Europe a success. Now, Europeans can say, no, that's not the case. Well, what happens when you lose European energy? What happens when you have to pay, high prices for energy? Your economy collapses. So that proves my thesis. Russia has underwritten the success of the European economy for several decades now, and Europe has committed financial suicide by sanctioning Russian energy. And this is the economic aspect of this conflict. It's not Russia who's going to have to cease and desist in Ukraine because their economy is failing. It's the Europeans. They can't afford to go on. They can't afford to continue to do this. And now we come to the economic or the political aspect of this economic conflict, because as James Carville, The Raging Cajun once famously told Bill Clinton back in, I think, 1992 when he was running for the presidency, stop talking about foreign policy. Stop talking about this, that, and the other thing. There's only one thing to talk about. It's the economy, stupid. Focus on the economy. Well, guess what's happening? You know, the G7 got together and had their little meeting in early July, and they pointed an accusatory finger at the or maybe in June, they pointed an accusatory finger at the Russians, and they said they're going to do all sorts of nasty stuff to the Russians. One of the guys there was a guy named Boris Johnson. He was the Prime Minister of England. He's gone. I mean, he's still there in caretaker status while they find, but he submitted his resignation. Another guy, Draghi, was an Italian Prime Minister. He just resigned. And I think we're going to see by the end of this year that there's not going to be too many of those political people who stood on a stage saying they're going to stand tall against Russia. They're not going to be there anymore. They're going to be replaced by people who have to confront the ugly reality that Europe's economy is sunk. Not sinking, sunk. The Titanic has gone under. Europe's in lifeboats right now, praying that somebody comes and picks them up. And this is the reality. Russia has dominated Ukraine conflict militarily on the battlefield, economically by just flipping the narrative about who's going to get hurt by these sanctions, and politically. Vladimir Putin's, approval rating is an all-time high, 86. I would say in some areas it's over 90. Man, every rested politician would love to have an approval rating like that. They don't. Biden's approval rating is in the 30s, could be dipping down into the 20s pretty soon. And as I said, these parliamentary systems of government who are much more prone to the fickleness of the people, they're collapsing one by one because they made a fatal mistake in tying on to a U.S. policy that wasn't well thought through at all. There's, the Biden administration gets an F when it comes to Ukraine. And it's an F that's attached with a lot of death notices. This isn't just a political game. This isn't, typical American, politicians, trying to undermine other politicians. People are dying by the tens of thousands because of the failure of America's policy. So it's a failing grade with a whole bunch of, shame on you attached to it, given the human costs of this failure.
I couldn't agree more, Scott. I completely concur. 1,000%. That is a great summary and overview. I was just thinking about one of the proposed plans to deal with Russia long term, and it was about something about a cap of Russian oil between $40 and $60 a barrel. And I think Russia said that's not going to happen, but the G7 or the European Union or one of those particular groups has been floating this idea of capping the cost of a barrel of Russian oil. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, this is, again, the G7 acting as if they count. They don't count anymore. They literally don't count anymore. There's this thing called the Brics. It's the new wave of economic international economic forum. And Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. We can now add Iran, Argentina. Oh, wait a minute. There's other nations lining up to join. Turkey, Saudi Arabia is lining up to join. I mean, BRICS is where it's at. One of the things that BRICS discussed in their last meeting was, hey, this thing called the petrodollar, the U.S. dollar uses a global reserve currency. And now we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to come up with our own currency basket where we trade, not in the dollar, but we trade using the Chinese currency, Brazilian currency. We'll come up with a way to make this happen. Is it as efficient as using the petrodollar? No. But the petrodollar is gone because it's attached to American policy, which uses sanctions, which uses threats imposed by the dollar, and we're just done with that. It's like the G7. I mean, the G7 doesn't control anything when it comes to oil. Oh, we're not going to buy Russian oil unless they cap it at $40 to $60. Russia just said you ain't going to buy it, period. Damn what you want to pay. You ain't buying Russian oil, period. You're done. We're done with you. We got other people that are willing to buy it at market rates. We got India. To show you how pathetic Europe is. We're not going to buy Russian oil. Sanction, sanction, sanction. We need Russian oil. We can't buy it because we said we're not going to buy it. Who's buying it? The Indians are buying it. Hey, India, you sell us some of that Russian oil? Yeah, we'll pay above market retail, price premiums because we really need it. So how brilliant are these Europeans? Really?
Yeah.
This is stupidity defined. The same thing with the Biden administration. We're not going to buy Russian oil. We ain't buying Russian oil. Our refineries only work on Russian oil. That's Venezuela and sell us oil. And they're not selling us oil. We need Russian oil. How are we going to make that happen? All right. We're going to have the Russians send their tankers out into the middle of the Atlantic. And then we're going to cross-transfer the tankers onto other tankers. And we'll have them flow into American ports. But we're going to call it somebody else's oil. You just can't say it's Russian oil. And we're going to pay twice as much for it. Come on. This is just stupidity. It's the personification of stupidity. No, so this concept of capping Russian oil is just absurd in the extreme. One, the G7 thinks it matters. It doesn't matter. That's been proven. You don't count anymore. Now when it comes to Russia, because Russia don't care. They tell what they say about the honey badger. Honey badger
Don't give a fuck.
So the Russians are the honey badger right now. They are the personification of the honey badger. They just don't give a you know what about you anymore, G7. You can sit there and have all the fantasies you want of capping Russian oil. You ain't buying it to begin with because they're not selling it to you at any price. They don't need you anymore. You don't count. Done.
So my question would be, when did this, you said few decades back, when did this dependence on Russian oil by the European Union happen, and why? What were the ramifications of that? Why did that start?
Well, Europe's been buying Russian oil for Russian energy since the end of the Second World War. Once Russia got their energy up and running in the 1960s, Germany made the West Germany made cheap Russian gas a cornerstone of Germany's economic rebounding. The United States has been criticizing it ever since. Oh no, Germans, you can't be buying that Russian gas. The Germans are like, are you going to sell us gas at a cheap price? No, shut up. We're buying the Russian gas. And then the rest of Europe sort of latched onto it. This became an even bigger issue when the Cold War ended. The Russians had this extensive pipeline system that was built to provide energy to Eastern Europe. So all those Eastern European countries that claim they hate Russia, the only thing that made them economically viable in the past 30 years is cheap Russian energy. We hate Russia. Keep the Russian gas flowing. Don't piss them off. Get the Russian gas flowing. We hate you, Russia. Keep the gas flowing, man. Keep the price down. We hate you, Russia. No, not too much. Keep the gas flowing. And that's just the reality. Like I said, Europe has been, use the term addicted. When do we use the term addicted for good business practice? Is Intel addicted to, cheap raw materials for the production of their computers? You don't say they're addicted. You say that's pretty damn smart. Get the high quality materials at the cheapest price possible. Build your computer, build the price, rake in the profits. You don't say they're addicted. No, that's just good business. So why is Europe suddenly addicted to Russian energy? Europe's addicted to what is smart, good business practice. And all that cheap energy has allowed Europe to build these wonderful factories. And, they build these wonderful products, and their quality of life is so great that they get to have, 4-day weekends. They get to have the entire month of August off. They get vacations. Hell, let's give them pensions. We don't have pensions anymore in America. We don't do that because we're America. But those Europeans, those softies, they work 4-day week. They cut their hours. They don't work those damn hard, back-breaking, 80-hour work weeks. No, hell no. 35 hours, man. And full insurance, healthcare, education, all that good stuff that they got. You know how they afforded it? Cheap Russian energy. That's it. And now they don't have cheap Russian energy. And guess what they can't afford? Anything. Anything. They can't afford anything. They are done broke. It's just, I mean, I don't mean to laugh because I have relatives that live there and they have kids growing up, and this is going to be hell on earth for them. Hell on earth. The adults, with the exception of my sister, I don't care about. Adults make mistakes. That's on you. You know, you decided to tie your shoelaces together and try and, you know, like walk a tightrope and you fall. I don't care, man. That was your choice. But the kids, no. Kids didn't deserve this. And the adults of Europe have literally sold the next generation, you know, down the road. It's just a bad deal. So I don't have any sympathy for any European politicians. If their careers end, good. And I hope the kids put somebody in place who looks out for their interests, which means cheap Russian energy. I mean, if you can find a cheaper source of energy, buy it. That's called good business practice. If you can get the Algerians to sell gas to Spain and have Spain, you know, send this gas on to Europe, and it costs less than Russian gas, sign that damn contract. But, you know, the one thing Algeria can't do is show a track record of long-term production stability. The one thing that differentiates Russia from everybody else is they've been pumping this stuff out without disruption, ever. Even when it was the Soviet Union and it was in their interest, you know, to use it, they never did. They just kept it coming, They honored every single contract they've done. Look how stupid the Russians are. I say stupid in the quotations. You know, they had an opportunity to cut Germany off for good, with the maintenance of Gulf Stream 1, because Germany wasn't going to allow Gulf Stream 2 back up. So Gulf Stream 1, and the Russians could have just said, we're not playing this game, maintenance, we're going to shut it down forever. But what did Russia do? Maintenance got back up. They started sending the gas across. Not in the amounts they could have, but just enough to keep Germany alive.
That was today, right?
That was today. So, you know, the Russians haven't used energy as a weapon. This is one of the biggest lies that's promulgated out there. Russia has never used energy as a weapon. Everything Russia has done has been legal, 100% legal, contract-based. Now, you know, people say, well, wait a minute, they changed the nature of the contract. You're supposed to pay in dollars and euros, and the Russians are now saying you're paying in rubles. Rubles, that's not part of the contract. The Russians are using it. Man, are you guys stupid or what? You know, there's a reason why Russia doesn't allow these to be paid in euros and dollars now. It's called the United States of America and their European allies stealing $650 billion of Russia's sovereign wealth fund that was in dollars and euros that were deposited in banks, and they just went in and stole it. We acknowledge we have no legal foundation to do what we did, but we're doing it anyways. That's called violating the economic contract between the West and Russia. Europe, you should be thankful Russia's giving you the opportunity to buy gas in rubles, because otherwise you wouldn't have any gas. You know, you keep looking over your shoulder for the American cavalry to arrive. It ain't arriving. There is no American gas tanker coming. Want to know why? Because we deal with the real world market. And you know what else is going around in the world? It's not just Europe having an energy shortage. The rest of the world is too. And there's other people out there who are competing for the LNG tankers that you think we're going to give you for free. Ain't nothing free in this world. You're dealing with the American capitalism. We aren't philanthropists. We pretend to be, but we're not. We're businessmen. You want the tanker? Pay for the tanker. Can't afford the tanker? South Koreans can afford to pay for it. They get the gas. I'm sorry, Europe. Oh, that's right. You thought you were our best, closest allies. You thought you were NATO. You thought that meant something. It means nothing when it comes to this, guys. This is what makes America run. Not NATO, not Europe, not a great relationship with France. We don't have a great relationship with France. Talk about it, but it don't exist. A great relationship with England. We used to have one, but it ain't that great anymore. We don't have a great relationship with anybody, because unless you can pay dollars, we don't want you. We don't need you. So sad, too bad, wouldn't want to be you.
Yeah, I in preparation for this program, I saw that the G7 was the biggest news coming out of it was a $200 billion package for world development. And I mean, the world has been hip to the mafia style bust out that is lending by the IMF and the World Bank, and that's where the funds will come through. The bust out is classic. I mean, you need irrigation. We're going to provide the funds through the World Bank, and then there's cost overruns, and all the contracts go to American companies, and they don't do the work, and then the irrigation thing falls through, and then we have to have structural adjustment loans and austerity on the people, and we have to starve the people, and then and we have to take assets as collateral as per the original contracts, and so on and so forth. So we bust you out, just like my people do, the Italians up in in you're New York and New Jersey. It's a classic bust out, and the world has been aware of this for decades. And Nkrumah, Lumumba, Sankara, all these all these African intellectuals wrote about it. I mean, very eloquently. Castro wrote about it. Everybody knows about it. It's no secret. But now the power is in their hands to do something about it, and they're going to do whatever it takes to sort of bring this bullshit to its knees. And I couldn't be happier about it. How do you feel about? How do you feel about that? The whole situation, as far as the shift away from Western hegemony, and really the mass murder that's attended it, and it's the exploitation that's attended it for decades. How do you feel about that?
I mean, again, my life was built around closing with and destroying the enemy through firepower and maneuver. My concept of complex economics, when I first started, it was payday. Payday was a payroll officer flanked by 2 armed sergeants. I walked up in line, showed them my ID card. He compared it to a roster, saw the pathetic amount of money that the U.S. government was going to pay me, counted it out by hand, and gave it to me. I signed for it, and that was complex economics for me. Then I went over to the officers club and paid off my tab, and whatever was left over, I went and paid whatever bills I had. So you want to ask me what I think about complex global economics? I'd be a little facetious here, but it's not my strength. I'm not going to pretend I know the ins and outs of everything. I've read enough about the World Bank. I've read enough about the International Monetary Fund. I know enough about Bretton Woods and how which gave birth to these 2 institutions. I know how they're linked to this rules-based international order that the United States is selling to everybody. I know it's a giant con game. I know we can't admit the wrongs we've been doing. Sri Lanka, China caused Sri Lanka. China holds 10% of the Sri Lankan debt. That didn't cause it. What caused it was the people holding 90% of the Sri Lankan debt. Us. That's just the reality. Am I glad it's collapsing? Yes and no. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I live in the United States. I sort of need my economy to work. I need food to be affordable. I need gas to be affordable. I need my roads to be paved. I need the trains to run on time. They never have, but I'd like them to. I need the airlines to function. I need, when I hit the power switch, I'd like the lights to come on. When I turn up the heat in wintertime, I'd like the heat to go up. When I turn on the AC, I'd like the coolness to go up. I'm as guilty as anybody of being addicted to the quality of life that America has. And, so I can sit here and say, aha, I'm so happy this system's collapsing. But I really don't want it to, because it impacts me. I wish there was a way that we could control collapse so that, maybe our leadership would wake up and do the right thing. But they're not going to. So when I see the G7, I mean, what a pathetic group of losers. They got together last year. And of course, China was the big thing last year. If you remember 2021, they were in Cornwall, England. We're going to take on the Chinese. We're going to take on, the fact that the Chinese since 2010 have been doing this thing called the Belts and Roads Initiative. They've poured trillions, that's with a T, not an M or a B, but a T, trillions of dollars in the global infrastructure in the developing world. We now got to compete with them. So we're going to come up with this thing. And of course, it's Joe Biden, so it had to have a cool name like Build Back Better World. Sort of a play on Build Back Better. That was his thing for American infrastructure. Well, what happened to Build Back Better? It died because it was stupid, because it wasn't politically sustainable. What happened to Build Back Better World? It died because it was stupid. It wasn't sustainable. So now this year, rather than we're trying to breathe life into this corpse called Build Back Better World, they came up with some new fancy name, and they're going to pour a lot of money. Because remember, the Chinese have been spending trillions with a T. They're going, what, 200 billion? Are you kidding me? 200 billion, and the big projects are going to be some sort of solar panel farm in Angola. That's it, man. That's how we're saving the world. We're going to put 200. We're going to count on big business, the rest of the business world, to come up and provide the rest of the money through incentives that are this fancy. The Chinese don't play that game. The Chinese play the game of, what do you need? You need $1 trillion. Here it is. These are this is the contract. This is what we're charging. No hidden. There's no secret about the Chinese contract. It's all there. And if you don't deliver, then man, you pay the price. The Chinese recognized they were maybe being a little too hard early on. They tried to soften it, but I'll tell you what. You go around the world, Chinese aren't building solar panel farms in Angola. They're building pipelines, roads, highways, bridges, airfields, ports. They're making the world work. What are we doing? Not a damn thing. The G7 is a joke, literally a joke. And the biggest joke of the G7 is the United States and the Biden administration that doesn't realize that you can't compel democracy through, an economic bayonet or, highfalutin words coming out of the White House. We've sold this conflict between the West and the rest of the world as democracy through autocracy. I'd like to rephrase it a different way. A system that works and a system that doesn't work. And guess which side has a system that doesn't work? Us.
Well, we're going to take a brief break, but we'll be right back with some more discussion of this. So thank you, Scott, for being on the program. Taking a break. America Open Market, AO Market. The best digital market for humanity is a free, multilingual, borderless market open to international sellers with various languages included. With America Open Market, you may start selling in minutes after filling out the form. Comprehensive dashboard where you understand your sales, orders, and customers is available. You get paid directly, securely, and instantly on the America Open Market. You can sell your house, car, electronic laptop, CD player, boombox, phone, headphones, furniture, and clothing, and anything on AmericaOpenMarket.com where all your sales and customer needs are met. Register as a merchant today. You will not regret becoming a vendor at America Open Market. For further inquiries, contact us at aomarket@gmail.com. AO Market, best digital marketplace for humanity. Welcome back to the program, the Foreign Policy Review. Today we have Scott Ritter on talking about G7 and the Brics and the economic effects of the ongoing war with Ukraine. We have a question. Someone says, how long will the war in Ukraine last? Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, before we get into that, I want to add a little to what Scott said. Okay. And I want to point out that Ben Norton at Multipolarista has an excellent article on China and debt. And that whole propaganda campaign that came out last month. China doesn't deal with credit to other countries the way the United States does. The United States and G7 don't have a moral fiber in their body. All those things were setups. And I'll briefly give you a kind of close-up focus view of it. We have a friend. We haven't seen her in years, but she used to work for a development agency that worked closely with the State Department. And she came into our store. We had a bookstore, and she was furious. And the reason she was furious was they were working on an irrigation project in Africa, and the people that they were working with, I can't remember exactly who the people were, but the way they dug irrigation ditches was with a sharpened stick. So so the people with the bright idea at the State Department and her development agency she worked for was, we got to give these people shovels because they can shovel more dirt, because this hard dirt with shovels than they can. So, that's great for the guy making shovels in Illinois. That's wonderful, and you just bribe the officials down there and they're all for it. So they're on board. It's not like the people are getting anything. There's always bribable people. And so they get the shovels in. Well, it turns out that the soil is very, very hard, very dry, and these people don't have any shoes. So to kick the shovel into the dirt, it's too hard. They can't do it. So what was the solution? This is what made her furious. They sent shoes down. They sent shoes down. So the people began wearing shoes and trying to dig. Well, their feet could not adapt to the shoes, and they began to have all of these foot problems. So this is what really pissed her off. She just got out of a meeting. They were going to send a team of podiatrists down. So here they're continually milking this fucking population who had dug irrigation ditches on their own terms for millennium, and that's the fucking dishonest kind of bullshit that goes on with the IMF and the World Bank on a grand scale over and over. And the world is just fed up. And now they have an alternative with China, and they're going for it. And to a lesser degree, Russia. So there ain't no turning back. You're right, Scott. The G7, they're just a bunch of idiots. As far as I can tell, they're lost in the woods with this one because they're fundamentally criminals. They're fundamentally criminals. And if they can't deal on a criminal level, they don't know how to operate.
Didn't the G7 used to be known as the G8?
Yeah, Russia.
Well, they were the G7, and then they became the G8.
Okay.
That's when they invited Russia in.
Right.
Then they kicked Russia out because of the Crimea thing, and so so now they're back to being the G7. Russia is a part of the G20. G20, of course, is the brainchild of the G7. The G7 went, wow, if we can control the European and transatlantic economy this way, imagine if we made it the G20 and we could control the world. Control the world. So the G20s come together. The problem with the G20 is that the G20 was merely supposed to be a rubber stamp for G7 policy. So the G7 always meets first. Always meets first. A little secret club of the G7. They come up with how we're going to control the world. Then they go to the G20 and they dictate to the G20 how they're going to control the world. Well, let's start off with the G7. It's supposed to be the world's largest economies. But you know who's not in the G7? One of the world's largest economies, China. But China and Russia are in the G20, along with India, Brazil, South Africa. Wait a minute. That sounds like the Brics. So now we got the G7 trying to dictate to the G20 what the world economy should look like, and you got Brics saying, no, that ain't going to happen. We're not. So the G7 thinks it can influence the G20. Brics is trying to influence it. And now the G7 is doing something called, hey, let's kick Russia out of the G20 because we're not happy about what's going on in Ukraine. The rest of the world went, no, we're not going to do that either. Russia's here. So what's going on? The G20 is supposed to be meeting in, I think, November in Indonesia. Indonesia's hosting it. They've had a couple preliminary meetings, as you always do when you have these big organizations. You had the foreign ministers get together early in July. Of course, they had to make a big show out of it with Blinken and Truss and others saying, we're not going to be in the same room with the Russians. And so there's walkouts and all that. And so nothing happened. Then they had the finance ministers meeting. They couldn't get an agreed upon statement because we can't. We have to condemn Russia for Ukraine. Well, why? Why not condemn NATO for Ukraine? Why not condemn the United States for Ukraine? Why don't we condemn the real people who caused this problem? But no, the G7 had to make a big show about this. And in an interesting, in the statement that did come out, that was put out by the Bank of Indonesia, because they sort of, it's a state bank, represents the finance minister. They said, yeah, some of these big issues like world hunger, I guess we're going to have to deal with them using alternative means. What is the alternative mean? Brics. Brics is basically the G20. I don't think the G20 is going to survive this year, because they're going to come out of November having accomplished nothing. And in order for the world's economy to move on, it's not going to move on because the G7, they can't even afford the airplane ticket. I'm making this up, but I mean, they're so broke, they can't afford anything. Who can't afford things? The BRICS. The BRICS Plus, the BRICS expansion. Everybody wants to join the BRICS now. Everybody's running to join BRICS. And BRICS is going to be the forum working with, surprisingly enough, the United Nations, because the alternative to the rules-based international order is something called the law-based international order. And the law they're talking about is the United Nations Charter. And most Americans, well, we don't like it. Hey, America, read the damn Constitution. I really encourage you to do this, because it sort of defines who we are and what we are as a people. But you do understand that when the United States Senate ratifies with the appropriate majority a treaty, it becomes the law of the land. I mean, this is a big word, law of the land. Well, the United Nations Charter is sort of a treaty. It was ratified by the United States Senate. It's the law of the damn land, guys. So don't sit here and dismiss the United Nations Charter, because in doing so, you're dismissing your own country. That's how pathetic you are, America. You don't know what you're doing. You're so stupid. Read the Constitution, understand what the consequences of the Constitution are, and stop walking away from that which defines you as a people, as a nation. We should be the nation leading the charge for a law-based international order. But instead, we're addicted to this rules-based international order, which is nothing more than a corrupt club. I think, Carlo, you said it. It's the mafia. The rules-based international order, I think that could define the mafia. Cosa Nostra, the rules, you're supposed to put a horse head in your bed. Okay, well, there you go. That's how America operates. But China, Russia, and the rest of the world are saying, no, we'd like to operate in accordance to that which we have all already agreed upon. We don't need to come up with new rules. We don't need to come up with a new system. We have a system. Why don't we just give it a chance to work the way it's supposed to work?
But our viewers they're clamoring to hear you talk about the war right now.
Right. So we have talk about the HIMARS, please. Can they reshape the battlefield? That's a real question from Soy Family.
Yeah.
HIMARS is an American-made multiple launch rocket system. Comes to two versions: a wheel version fires 6 rockets, a track version you can fire 12 rockets, or 6 plus 1 300-kilometer range ATACMS. We're not selling the Ukrainians ATACMS yet, so we're just going to focus on the HIMARS rockets. Some of them are GPS guided. They provide long range with extreme accuracy. Could the HIMARS change the battlefield? What's happening with HIMARS is the Ukrainians are now able to reach out and touch, thanks to the provision of Western intelligence, primarily American intelligence, reach out and touch Russian command posts, Russian artillery, Russian ammunition dumps, troop concentrations, etc. Are they killing more Russians? Absolutely. HIMARS is killing Russians. Is it changing the battlefield? No, not at all. Again, imagine a battlefield the size of, I don't know, just say the East Coast, sort of wrapped around in a crescent. So we're going from New York down to Virginia, wrapped around. Now imagine a truck with 6 rocket tubes on it, with 6 rockets in there. And imagine trying to say that you're going to change the entire frickin' battlefield that I just described, this massive geographic space, with 6 goddamn rockets. You ain't changing nothing. You're firing them off, and they're having an impact where they hit. Oh, so sad, too bad to be the Russians on the receiving end. They're dead. Yeah, but now that you fired them, you got to run, because the Russians are looking for you with their drones and their stuff, and they're going to pick you off one by one by one by one. We've provided 12 HIMARS. They're killing Russians. the way that 12 HIMARS can kill, it's not changing the outcome. When was the last time Ukraine took any territory? No, they're not. The Russians are driving them back. And one by one, HIMARS is going to be picked off. If not the system itself, the rockets. The Russians have been blowing up all the warehouses with all the HIMARS rockets. And what's interesting is, to show you again how stupid America really is. HIMARS is a valuable part of our military technology. We use it, to control the battlefield that we're on. We've given the Ukrainians one third. That's 1 out of every 3 HIMARS rockets produced have gone to Ukraine. The vast majority of those are blown up before they get a chance to be fired. The Russians are knocking them off. So, man, what if we ever went to war against, say, oh God, I don't know, Russia or China, and we got HIMARS, man. We got all sorts of HIMARS. We don't have HIMARS, guys, because we've given them all away to Ukrainians, and they've blown them up. We can't fight a war anymore because we don't have enough ammunition to fight a war anymore. So HIMARS is not going to change the battlefield. It's going to make the Russians more pissed off. You want to know what's happened to Ukraine because of HIMARS? The Russians came out yesterday and said, yeah, this special military operation, Donbass, it ain't the Donbass anymore, guys. It's all the territory we've already captured. We're keeping it, and we're going to take more. Hint, Odessa. Yeah, we're going to keep going. You want to keep receiving these weapons? We're going to keep expanding the territory we're keeping. Ukraine will not look like Ukraine ever again. And if Ukraine wants to continue to play this stupid game, there won't be a Ukraine when this is over. Russia's just going to take it all. That's just the reality of it. And there's nothing the West or Ukraine can do to stop it.
So we have another great question. Do you think Russia standing up for itself will improve conditions in the global South long term? From Dust James.
Russia's divorce with the West is creating a new geopolitical reality in the world that will allow the global South over the long term to divorce themselves from the IMF, from the World Bank, and from these other institutions of global hegemony that the United States has used to keep itself in place. There will be a price paid. I mean, I don't mean to be, too negative here, but guys, there's going to be a food crisis next year, and millions of people are going to die. Millions of people are going to die, and there's nothing that can be done to save them. Nothing. It's too late. It's over. We don't realize it yet, but the Horn of Africa, I don't want to be Ethiopian. I don't want to be Somali. I don't want to be anybody in that region. I don't want to be Yemeni. I don't want to be a number of people. They're going to die, millions of them, most of whom will be children, young children. So all the Americans that, wear your heart on your sleeve, get ready for your heart to break, because you're murdering these kids. No one else. It ain't Russia. Russia's not murdering them. You are, by supporting a government that imposes sanctions that not only disrupts food supply this year, but this is about disruption of networks. But you're also disrupting the flow of fertilizer, the fertilizer that these guys need to grow the crops to the levels necessary to feed the global population. You're going to see world food production cut by significant amounts next year, and there's nothing to replace it. There's no reserves. There's nothing. So these kids are going to die. And it's America that killed these kids. America killed these kids. Europe killed these kids. I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. Own it, America. USA, USA, USA. Stick it in your you-know-what. Take those words. They mean nothing. The only thing that means anything is if you can find a way to feed those kids. So I'll tell you what, America, right now, you want to feed those kids? Go shopping, buy a couple cans of food, put it in a damn box, fill up 1 billion boxes, and maybe you can stop a fraction of these kids from starving to death. Because that's all that's going to do it. They need food. They need food. They aren't going to have the food because your president sanctioned Russian fertilizer. End of story.
What will it take to get our leaders to admit defeat in Ukraine? That's from the Heat Inferno.
Well, the best way to get someone to admit that they, A paratrooper will admit that he did a poor job of packing his parachute. When he's falling down from 10,000 feet, he pulls the lanyard and the chute don't open. So as he's finishing the rest of his fall to the earth, he'll go, I may have wanted to do a better job of packing my chute. Boom, dead. That's, generally politicians don't like to admit they've made a mistake. They will admit it, they made a mistake when they're begging forgiveness. And there's going to be a lot of politicians begging forgiveness in the near future, especially European politicians. We've seen Johnson taking a hike. The Conservatives aren't going to last long in England because their policies, frankly speaking, suck. We've seen Draghi in Italy taking a hike. He's done. Who's going to replace him? Maybe the far right. Now, I'm not normally a fan of the far anything, but the far right in Italy, they're the guys that actually think that Russia's pretty cool, Putin's pretty cool. So you're going to see Italy suddenly, Italy, who's been on the forefront of, raw Ukraine, suddenly is going to be hitting the brakes on that. That's going to cause a whole bunch of problems in Europe. Scholz is going to start crying for forgiveness, how stupid he is. They all are, Macron, everybody. They're going to be begging their people to forgive them for the policies that they've helped implement that have brought about the economic harm. Biden's already, the Democrats are just dumping him like a bad habit. They're starting to beg forgiveness. What will it take for the leaders to admit it takes their political defeat, takes their political demise? We don't have courageous political leaders anymore who in midstream can say, whoa, I made a mistake. America, I made a mistake. I was going down the wrong path. We got to hit reverse here. We got to back up, and there's going to be a price to pay. And I'm sorry, that's on me, my bad. But got to shift if we're going to fix this. Because if I keep you going down this route here, it's only going to get worse. Find me a politician that has the courage to do that. They don't exist because politicians are narcissists. You don't become a politician in America unless you look in the mirror and say, I love myself. Mm-hmm. I love myself more than I love anything else in the world. I'm going to run for office because I'm God's gift to everything. That's what an American politician says. We don't grow the Jimmy Stewarts anymore. The people who, Mr. Smith goes to Washington because he gives a damn about citizens. He gives a damn about his community. American politicians, with few exceptions, don't give a damn about anything but themselves. So they're never going to say, I'm wrong, because they can't be wrong because they're God's gift to the world. Everything they say smells like roses. No, it don't. It stinks.
Helen Marion says, which European country do you think will renege against NATO first and how soon?
Well, they're already doing it. Hungary's sort of in Moscow right now. The Hungarian leader was speaking. He said, he was funny. I love his honesty. He said, we need, I figure what was it, 700 million tons, barrels, gallons, 700 million something to survive. And it don't exist unless it comes from Russia. So we're going to be buying it, and we're, to survive. So Hungary's already reneged. I think you're going to see, you're seeing the process of reneging. Italy, if the right comes in, Italy's going to be jumping ship. Germany already is reneging. Look at what Germany's doing. The head of their Bundestag, or a very influential member of the Bundestag, came out and said, not only do we have to find a way to continue to get access to Russian energy, it has to be our long-term strategy. This concept of divorcing ourselves from Russian energy is suicide. We need to have good relations with Russia. And I think you're going to see one by one, all of Europe, except Poland and the Baltics, coming to that conclusion. And Poland and the Baltics may very well come to that conclusion. I think, was it the Lithuanian prime minister resigned? She's done. Estonia will follow suit. Latvia, they can't survive because no matter how virulently anti-Russian the Baltic population is, you don't stay warm. You can stay warm a little while hating Russia because you can get really angry and you can get overheated. And I hate Russia so much, I'm overheated. But then the temperature drops sufficiently outdoors that your body heat isn't enough to compensate for the minus 50 degrees, and you realize you got no energy, and your hatred isn't going to keep you warm. You're going to get hungry, so you're not going to have enough energy in your body anymore to generate that hate-filled heat, and you're going to get cold really quick. And suddenly you're going to go, my God, I need Russia. I need Russia. I need better policies. And this is going to happen. And it's a good thing that it's going to happen. I'm just saddened by the cost of humanity, because I don't want people to be cold. I don't want people to go hungry. Mm-hmm. And they're going to go hungry. And it's going to be my relatives that are going hungry and cold and inconvenienced. And Americans are going to get hungry maybe. I don't know about going cold yet, because we do produce energy in this country. The last time I checked, we're just not very good at it. But no, this is a tragedy. This is a tragedy. But it's, you know what else are tragedies? And I'm probably going to get in a lot of trouble here, because I got to make sure that I'm not encouraging anybody to do anything stupid. I believe in constitutional due process. But you know what else is a tragedy? But there's revolution. Thomas Jefferson, the tree of liberty needs to be refreshed with the blood of tyranny every 10 years. Hey, man, the tree needs refreshing. I don't want it to be with blood. Maybe we can find an alternative. But refresher was something. But but unfortunately, with when a system's gone, people keep talking about too big to fail. Banks are too big to fail. Well, no, they're not. It's just too painful to fail. The banks can fail and maybe should fail. America, we need to fail. We need to fail in a big way. I mean, we are failing, but we don't recognize it. But we need to fail in a way that wakes the American people up, and they say, no more of this stuff. I'm not talking about storming anything, guys. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, if you want to storm something, every American should storm their local political parties and take control of them legally, non-violently, but take control of them and get good people on the ballot. Stop being that person who goes to the election polls on election day and looks down at the ballot and says, who the hell are these people? How did they get here? And why would I want to vote for any of them? If you want to vote for somebody, then put the name on the ballot. And if you say, well, I can't because the local political parties are too strong, get rid of them, purge them, take them over. March on the Democratic Party of your local town. March on the Republican Party and kick them out of the office and say, we're in charge now. We're putting people's names on the ballot. That's called democracy, people. Make it work. Don't be the sheep that sit at home and go, I'm unhappy because I don't like who's on the ballot. Do something about it.
Well, that's actually anarcho-syndicalism.
Mm-hmm. That's too many syllables, man.
That's the very definition of anarcho-syndicalism.
We have time for one more question. It says, Scott, have you considered joining or starting a veterans anti-war organization? That's from Dust James.
There's a lot of veterans anti-war organizations out there, so I'm not going to. I'm not imbued with enough hubris to think that I, Scott Ritter, can start a veterans anti-war organization that will actually work. No, that isn't going to happen. I support genuine anti-war organizations that are out there, but a veterans group has to be community based. Look at the schizophrenia of America. I was part of an anti-war movement once. I sold my soul to them. This is the anti-war movement that was supposed to stop the war in Iraq. I gave it all. I did everything I could for them. I poured my life into it. And it hurt my family. It hurt me because it didn't work, because they're not really anti-war. They were anti-Bush all along. It wasn't about being anti-Iraq war. These people weren't against the war. They were against George W. Bush. That was it. How do I know? Because the same people didn't do a damn thing when Barack Obama was carrying out similar policies around the world. And these same anti-war activists right now are running around screaming Slava Ukraina, waving the Ukrainian flag without a freaking clue what they're doing. They don't know that they're not anti-war. They're just pro-Biden right now. They're pro-Biden. If they were anti-war, they'd be pro-Putin, because Putin's the most anti-war person in Europe right now. He didn't want to go to war in Ukraine. We forced him to go to war in Ukraine. And it isn't even a real war. It's a special military operation. Oh, yeah, people are dying. I can tell you what, Russia could have cranked up the pain meter from the start. They didn't. We're the ones cranking it up by providing Ukraine with these weapons, by providing Ukraine with false hope. by paying all the salaries of the soldiers, underwriting this conflict with our national treasure, letting the Ukrainians bleed it out on the battlefield. Anti-war, there ain't no such thing as an anti-war organization in America. There might be a few, but I'm talking about one that can actually implement anti-war policy, because they're all politicized. You're anti-Iraq war because George W. Bush was a demon. You're anti-Putin now, but you're not anti-Ukraine war. You're anti-Putin's invasion because you're pro-Biden. Well, both Bush and Biden suck, and they're horrible, horrible people and horrible leaders. And guess what? American anti-war movement, you suck too. No, I don't want to be part of it anymore. I will do what I'm doing right now, speaking out against bad policy, but I'm not joining organizations that suck. Stop. If you want to go anti-war, then go anti-war. Stop aligning yourselves with failed American politicians, failed American policies, failed American political parties.
Well, thanks for joining us on the program today, Scott. We're going to close now, and I believe you have another show you're going to be on pretty soon.
Yeah, you guys got me all riled up now.
Absolutely, get you started on the day. So thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks
Absolutely
for having me.
Great show. I think this has been a wonderful talk, and I'm glad we got to answer some questions for people. Remember, we had a show last week that we had that was deplatformed from YouTube. You can get on World Inkers Network and see that show at worldinkers.com. And the breaking news that just came is President Biden has tested positive for COVID-19. That just came in. So we'll see how that turns out. I hope he's okay. I mean, I don't wish any ill upon anybody. But thanks for Scott Ritter for joining us. And we have Hinox says thank you and big love and respect from ET. Thank you very much for being watching the program. Everybody watching, subscribe to our channel as you're watching right now. We'll have Scott on in future shows. So Billy Bob and Carlo Parcelli, thanks for being co-hosting and listening in and watching the show and asking questions and keeping this thing moving. And without further ado, go out and do some research and some reading and enjoy some more of Scott Ritter on his Telegram. Thanks for watching the Foreign Policy Review. I'm Dustin Pickering. Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other